Present.
David Ness.
I'm here, and I noticed Marty circling the parking lot, so he'll be in momentarily.
But the place to park is a little tough.
Jason Leonard. Rob Rutter. Michael Casper.
Present.
Carolyn Smith. Larry Smith.
Present.
Angela Clauser.
Present on the phone.
And we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Introduction of board members. For those on the phone, we could start with Angela.
Angela Clauser, Panorama Schools.
Andy Buffington, Winnebago and Hancock Emergency Management, representing communication centers.
I believe that was it. We could start with Michelle.
Michelle Bischoff, City of Des Moines, representing Professional Fire Chiefs of Iowa.
Larry Smith, Emergency Management.
Dave Ness, Municipal Police.
Peter Huffman, Iowa Department of Transportation.
Tom Lampy, DPS.
Chris Myers, I'm the SWIC.
Patrick Updike, Iowa Department of Corrections.
Mike Casper, Lynn County Sheriff's Office.
Ellen Hagan, Joe Fire and Rescue, representing volunteer firefighters.
John Benson, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Okay, welcome everybody. As usual, we have a full agenda, a bunch of new business, so we'll go ahead and get started with the approval of today's agenda. We get a motion for that, please.
Motion to approve today's agenda.
Second. Bischoff.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Was there not a typo?
Yeah, I think there may be a typo for the approval of the minutes. It says April, and it should be August, I believe, 9th of or August 8th of 2019.
And Winnebago spelling on the back.
Okay, so just amend the date. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Need the approval of the meeting minutes. That is also a typo, looks like, April.
Oh, that was covered under the minutes. Sorry.
Is the agenda typo also the same as the?
Yeah. The agenda.
Meeting minutes?
Well, the meeting minutes I think are good, but it was just a typo on the agenda for the minutes. So.
Okay, so the approval of meeting minutes from April 11th of.
Or for well, the approval would be for August 9th of 2019.
Okay.
The minutes from there.
All right. I'll entertain a motion for that with the correction of August on there.
August 8th.
8th. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, so. Okay, so I have do we have a motion for August 8th approval of the meeting minutes from August 8th?
Larry Smith.
Larry Smith, do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, SWIC report, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start off with our skip refresh. We had our final webinar on August 30th and 2 half days of in-person meetings on September 10th and September 11th. That work covered all the work done at the committee level with the webinar to kind of get things set up for the in-persons. And we looked over all the work that had been done by the committees. Some further suggested changes and edits were made. And those changes will be sent to the committee chairs for evaluation and additional thoughts and things like that. We're probably going to have a follow-up webinar with one committee to kind of further elaborate and expound on a few things, but we'll get that scheduled in the next couple of weeks. And my hope is that we'll have a draft document to start looking over late this fall and possibly get it through the approval process in early 2020. And then that would set us up for another 2 to 3 years with the skip pretty easily. So I do want to take the time to thank everybody that participated on all of the webinars. There are several of them. And then the 2 in-person meetings, there's a lot of work, a lot of time that was devoted to that. It's sincerely appreciated. There's too many people to mention by name, but you spent some time on those webinars. And if you did, thank you very much. It's sincerely appreciated. And I greatly, I'm forever grateful for your commitment to the improvement for interoperability in Iowa. So, further note, we sent out the interoperability markers to the board last month for review and some comments. They also went to some key stakeholders that may have covered other things like 911 and alerts and warnings. We got a comment or two back, and I forwarded those on to ECD for their updating of our markers as well. And my understanding is those suggested revisions were accepted and incorporated into the document. So, for the most part, things looked like they were pretty accurate. Do want to pass on an update of the work product from our encryption subcommittee to everybody else too. You remember last month I had mentioned that one of the work products or byproducts of our work was mentioned in mission critical communications last month. One of the manufacturers out there, Motorola, has actually said that they are going to work to support and actually have released an update in software that will allow subscriber units to affiliate with multiple KMFs. I think this is a good thing for us, and with respect to how our network is going to be set up and how our other neighboring states' network is going to be set up with encryption as well. When dealing with KMFs, my understanding is that the other manufacturers are looking at doing the same things as well in a relatively short amount of time as well. So for those of us that participated in that encryption subcommittee, our work was taken into account by the manufacturers, and it looks like there's going to be numerous improvements coming down the road from that work. So again, thank you to everybody for that. Quick update on status board. We've signed our half of the MOU. My understanding is that the contracts individual from Minnesota was out of the office for a while on leave, and he has that document in front of him now, and we should be getting notice that that was signed within the next week or so. And then from there, the clock starts 30 days for us to get the source code from them, and we can start work to getting that retrofitted to what we need here in Iowa. Conversations to start setting up a server have been started within agencies that would be able to help us do that. And it looks like we're going to be able to get this done. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So my hope is that over the course of the next 6 months, we have a pretty good direction with this and where it goes and everything else. We're starting some more pre-work for the interstate interoperability meetings. We had to have some states that had to postpone some of the meetings because of various things going on within their states, whether it was personnel changes and staff changes or natural disasters such as flooding. We're going to get those some more of that pre-work fired up here over the next couple of weeks and have some meetings scheduled for start of Q4 2019. The DHS Data Interoperability Group that I'm participating in, the first work product from that group has come out. It's a sizable paper. It's right around 100 pages. I've been spending some time after hours going over that, and we'll probably be adding some comments to that here in the next couple of days. If I find something that's worthwhile to mention to the board, I'll go ahead and pass those comments on as well. My hope long term is that we could find some best practices from that group that we could apply to how things are done here in Iowa at some point. My guess is the official publishing of that document is probably at least 6 or 8 months out. So there's a little bit more legwork to be done with that. And then that, of course, would feed nicely back into our FirstNet subcommittee. I had a chance to participate with the 911 peer assessment. 911 program manager Blake DeRushi allowed me to offer some insights and feedback on elements that were related to the board. That meeting was Tuesday, and I attended that. Also attended the update to the 2012 Communications Annex. That is kind of housed by FEMA, if I remember right. Marty Smith was also there with me at that meeting, and we were able to give a lot of good feedback and offer up some new information as well. One final housekeeping item. We have a new venue that we will be at starting next month. That is at the Des Moines Parks and Rec facility. For those of you that have never been there, it's a building that has similar technological capabilities as this. It's located at 1551 East Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway. As I found out the other day, the east is key in the address, otherwise it takes you to a guy's house. So you want to make sure you include the east. So that's where our meetings will be until the renovations are completed here in West Des Moines. My understanding is that they're scheduled to start at mid-month in October. So we now have some housing accommodations for the next several months while those renovations are ongoing. That's my report. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the 911 report from Blake.
Good morning, everyone. Chris mentioned the peer assessment that has been going on all week. Actually, pretty much immediately following this meeting is the out brief from the peer assessment. That's at 12:30, and it'll be at Joint Forces Headquarters. That also produces a written report, so if you're not able to make it, we'll make sure to get the written report spread out far and wide. The assessors have been working. They worked late last night till like 8 o'clock at night writing the report. So hopefully to get some good feedback on what we've done so far and kind of give us a template of where we need to go with the program. October 14th, kind of in conjunction with the Iowa APCO NENA conference, I've scheduled a 911 program update. That's also at the same venue, the Holiday Inn on Merle Hay. You may have seen the news. Last month, we were notified that we were awarded $2.5 million in federal grants. That was from the National 911 Office. We are using that grant to basically supplement the virtual consolidation efforts. So the host remote shared services as well as the wireline migration. What that really does is we get to use our own money, or I'm sorry, we get to use the grant money instead of our surcharge funding. So it really does eventually filter through to the local jurisdictions as pass-through funds at the end of the year. So it benefits everyone, really. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay, User Group Committee, Chair Buffington.
All right, thank you. User group committee met last month. Ricks, again, they stay, Ricks 1 and 2 stays pretty active. 3, 4, 5, and 6, kind of limited activities. We're really starting to see that in UGC participation, so I'm going to be reaching out to the chair, vice chair of each one of those to see if they'll continue to try to support that across the state. We looked at 6 applications. That's going to be a new business today, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Finance, Chair Hagan.
Monthly expenditures during August for the Interoperable and Broadband Communications Fund was $10,395. The August ending balance was $219,332. Monthly expenditures during August for the SLIC P 2.0 were $9,432. Of that amount, $7,546 were federal expenditures. The remaining federal amount available from the grant is $523,461. Does the board have any questions? That ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benson's governance.
Meeting was scheduled for Labor Day. I don't work on Labor Day. We didn't meet. Any questions? Thank you.
Operations.
Operations met, and we have sent out the control station guidance as well as a proof of concept for legacy systems. Have received a few comments. If you have any other comments, please get them to me. We will then take those products into policy and make them formal. I also have some information for finance in regards to the FCC legal firm that we had talked about when we talked about air to ground, and I'll get that to you soon.
Is that for the cost of monitoring? Okay. All right, we'll go on to outreach. Either Sean or Ellen. Is Sean here today? Looks like it.
Thank you, Chair, Board. We've been working on the website. We're doing a couple of modifications on some modules on the website. We have been updating the Isicsb website also, the map page. You'll start seeing, if you don't see your agency and you've been approved, please contact me and let me know. I went through and updated that just the previous week to make sure that anybody who was in progress that had already gone through the board process has been moved to approved. We do have the Region 5 Isicsb training coming up Larry will be our great host for that. That will be on October 1st. There will be a session from 10 to 12 in which Robbie Johansson will be going over control stations. This is a great opportunity for training on control stations, especially for PSAP people, but anyone who is wanting to learn more about those control stations, this would be a great opportunity. From 1 to 4:30, we'll have our standard interoperability outreach. So we'll have our people from FirstNet there, as well as FirstNet AT&T. I believe David will be there. And we're really excited because this is one of the first times AT&T will be bringing maps with not only coverage, but there's also been discussion of actual tower maps, which is very exciting because this is something that we've been working with, and thankfully David has been working diligently on trying to make this a reality for us. And so this will be a great thing. We're also hoping we can get a couple of the local AT&T vendors there too, just so you can say, oh, that's who I would go to if in my town for FirstNet stuff. You know, there's this local provider. So again, that is Region 5, October 1st. 10 to 12 is the first part with the control stations. 1 to 4:30 is the second part with the interoperability update. That will be held at the Bridgeview Center, 102 Church Street in Ottumwa, Iowa. If you did not receive one of the email invites, please let me know. There's one that'll allow you to register for just the second half, and then there's another one that'll say, hey, I'll register for both. So if you're looking to register for the PSAP, please register for that and the control station training. Otherwise, if you only have time for the FirstNet outreach and the interoperability update, then register for that. Any questions?
The website, I think I sent you an email, and
Yep.
I think Holly's working on it. When you go to the website, the user should be able to click on training.
Yep.
And see where the next training is.
Right. Well, and that's
Yeah, it's not even on there. So my point is, we got to get something more visible.
right now. Training is under, I believe, the resource menu. So normally, I believe when you click on the resource menu and click on training, it goes to a calendar view. That's the way it's currently set up. If we need to evaluate and have that done differently, I'm all about.
I didn't see it on the calendar, or I couldn't find it.
Okay.
So I think that we could ask, maybe we keep that up.
Sure.
So if the
Sure.
normal person clicks on training, you should be able to see training.
I don't see training listed.
It should be one, yeah. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I kind of maneuver around that once in a while to put myself in a position of somebody
Sure.
who wants to register for something.
Sure. Well, we want to we're all about making things easy. If it's not easy, then I need to fix it.
And
So-
sometimes when we have two separate, when we have these emails, we've always had trouble with it going to the junk mail. Okay?
Yep.
So maybe when we report, we can say, go to the Isicsb website, training module,
Sure.
and sign up,
Sure.
and email both. That way we get it covered.
I'll have it on the website for the calendar by the end of this week, and there'll be a link so that you can register there as well. Does that sound
Anybody else
agreeable to
have any-
everyone?
Am I off?
We need simplicity.
Yeah.
Hey,
And I would consider a list view to a calendar, because if you don't know the date, a calendar's pretty useless.
now that I won't be able to say that I'm gonna be able to have done by the
No,
end
but
of the
I mean, I
week.
think it should be considered.
Sure.
That's all I'm asking.
That I can put it on our consideration list for when we have some time with WebSpec.
Because then you'd see, here's what's next. It might be months away, but here's
Sure.
what's next.
And honestly, a filter too would be nice. I can definitely put it in our queue, and when we have time on the WebSpec engine, we'll definitely move that. But as far as the calendar component, I can totally have that done this week, and make it so that you can just click on that calendar and click on that training and register directly from the website.
When I did a search for training, your Rec 5 does show up.
Okay. Well, but I'll make it easier,
That'd be good.
and I'll have that done this week.
Will any outreach be going back out around, because you're going to be doing this control station mini training, so to speak.
Mhm.
Are we going to repopulate that out and around the state as we evolve, or what's
I believe that's Chair Lampy's intention, is that the control station training will be a continued item. This is just the first.
Right. Yep. And what's important is that in that region, the PSAPs for sure get the invite, and we also follow up with a phone call. Did you get it? Because we need you there, because we're getting flooded with, we don't know how to use this stuff, and we're scared to use it. We don't want to even talk, which it is intimidating at first. You know, what's this for? You know, it's coming, but we're just not getting it done fast enough. But
Well, and I think the very exciting part also is, it will be taught by a person who's boots on the ground, uses it, connects with it, has actually put hands on. I think that's a big part. He'll be talking about scenarios in which how you would do this. And so, anyone that has one of these control stations or is a PSAP personnel that would do this is coming directly from a boots on the ground PSAP guy that does this every day. So I think that's critical to understand too.
the big thing is, what do I put it on? You know, what am I supposed to be parked on? How do I patch it in? How do I, if it's standalone, how do I do it that way? How do I turn the dial? And then Isicsb policy follows that because of pursuits and calling channels and how to use it for. So during the training, everybody that attends should be issued the Isicsb policy that pertains as close as we can to that control station or interop use.
Any other questions or comments? I'll put that on my list though of things to keep on our queue because that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, training committee, I don't think Chair Lund-Smith is on the call.
Yeah. I have an update for the board. So on the training call last month, I was there. We had a very, very full agenda. Some news, Amber Jennings was recommended for credentialing for incident tactical dispatcher. She'll actually be our first credentialed INTD in Iowa. So we've got her certificate here for her. We can recognize her during new business as well. Also, Brad Ratcliffe of Tipton was recommended for credentialing for ComL. In addition to that, we talked about training modules for the consulates and control stations. A script is being drafted for a webinar-style video for a lot of the standards that we have that affect the PSAPs directly. This will be a similar list to what went out on the flash drive for the various PSAPs when they took delivery of the consulate or control station. The desired outcome for them is to be something that can be watched and also read via closed captioning. The closed captioning comes into play if we've got, say, someone working at the panel and they've got a lot of radio transmissions that are coming in and they're talking a lot. They don't necessarily want any more auxiliary background noise. So the closed captioning component of the video, I think, will be good to add as well. The closed captioning will add a little bit of challenge to creating the video, but I think I've found a good way to make some of that fly. For our ComT course coming up in Clarinda at the fire department from September 23rd to the 27th, we now have 9 registered attendees with 1 tentative. This means we've met the minimum of 8, so that's good. There's still room to register. The max capacity in the class is 15, if I remember right, so we've got some room for some more if you want to join. We're also having a ComL course coming up at Burlington PD from November 19th through the 23rd. So far, we have 3 registered attendees so far. That has a minimum of 15. So if you know someone that wants to sign up for their ComL, send them over to me or Carol Lund-Smith, and we'll go ahead and get them the link for the registration and links to anything else they may need as far as prereqs. So that's the training report.
Is the ComT and ComL posted somewhere?
Yes, they are posted. I know the ComT is posted on the HSCMD calendar for sure. I think it's en route to being posted on the HSCMD calendar as well. I don't know if it's on our calendar or not. So
we need to put it on our calendar and in the training tab. So if you can work with Sean, just get, Holly can probably do it too.
Chris, will that ComL in Burlington be shared to our partners from Illinois and Missouri, being we're
So
close?
The ComL course has a maximum attendance of 30, I think. At a meeting recently, some people were asking about regional ComLs. It will probably be shared with them once we kind of have some time for Iowa people to show interest and register. The same MO will apply though. If we end up with 32 registered attendees, they all meet the minimums. But 3 of them are from Illinois, and we got 2 from Iowa that need to get in. The Iowa personnel get preference.
Okay, because it's a federally funded program.
It's a federally funded program through ICTAP.
If you're running short on numbers, reach out to our neighbors that are just across the river there.
That's the plan. So
Great, thanks.
Can you give us an update on the control stations?
Yeah. So as of today, I think we have maybe 2 or 3 that have not yet been delivered or picked up. And we're rolling through test calls. We've been through a couple of rounds of test calls when you look at what we had with RAGBRAI and then a couple of the other PSAPs that were not on RAGBRAI. So far, we've had about 40 successful test calls with PSAPs. The ones where we have not gotten a response from them yet, most of that's been because of either the talk group not being set on the radio that they were being called on, or it's not yet installed. As far as the PSAPs that don't have things installed yet, it's at least 30 to 35. And this is a case where the vendors are very, very busy trying to get that taken care of. So in good time, that'll all happen. The next round of test calls is slated for the 18th and 19th, and we're doing those on the regional call. And, we'll probably be working with the test calls through probably October or November for sure, just because of the sheer volume of PSAPs that are working on getting this equipment installed and integrated as much as they feel like they need to. And then just the amount of time to kind of re-rack the schedule after every round and tally up the results and things like that. So overall, things have been going fairly well. We ordered about 100 of those things, if you recall, and we've had 40 successful tests so far.
The intent is to get everybody to it for assurance. When they answer, we know for sure that they have access to the system.
Exactly.
And that kind of plays into the LEA
Yep.
committee, which is going to be coming up here. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Technology chair update.
Okay, the Technology Committee met on the 22nd of August and 3rd of September. Last, we were asked to dig into the topic of co-locating radio equipment on Isicsb sites. And so we were given at least 5 things to address that are pretty important when it comes to co-locating. I did draft an original document that was pretty watered down and sent it out to the technology members. And then, of course, when we met, we started to pick this thing apart and started adding more to it. But some of the things that it's addressing is, as far as a potential policy for co-locating a tower site would include an intermodulation study, electrical power supply issues, tower loading analysis, engineering drawings, and an MOA. So we got this going so much that we called Jeff Peterselek, the Attorney General's office, in to give us some legal counsel and advice on this and how far do we want to take this. And the end result was that we decided that we shouldn't really be trying to dig too deep into this outside of the technical aspect. We're going to go ahead and move forward with some policy here, but we're only going to address the technical side of it. Anything that comes with that, with the legal issues and all that, would probably be pushed off to the governance committee to deal with. So we do have a document sitting out there. We are adding more to it. Right now, we are dealing with some of the parameters that would come with just the ground itself. How much space would you allow someone to occupy within that section of dirt where the tower stands? We're also looking at the vertical structure, how much available space would be allowed. Obviously, a tower has been built with certain parameters that says you can load it up to so much. And so we're looking at percentages of usage of that tower, what type of licensing you should have, the responsibilities of the particular agency that wants to co-locate, their responsibilities as far as licensing and coordination. So even though we do have a a document out there. After we had our last meeting on the 3rd of September, I went in and added more to it and pushed that out to the technology committee, but they haven't had time to go through that and scrub all of that out, which they will on the 26th on our next technology call. But Rob Dannert's going to take that because I'll be in the ComT class in Clarinda. So we'll have more as we progress with this. So it's going to get, I think, with the words.
Okay.
So
Assuming the final would be signed off by the AG as well.
yeah.
All right. Anything else? First Step Broadband Committee, Chair Bischoff.
Yes, we met this month and had updates from AT&T, and I'll let David present those later in the meeting. And we had an update on who's on FirstNet. That work is moving ahead to be able to have a resource to know who has FirstNet and what resources they're using within the system. Andy with AT&T, the network engineer, was present and answered tons of our questions, and David will give us a summary of that presentation here. And we are working to get a local control webinar, which you may remember was talked about several months ago, but with the changeover in AT&T staff, that was delayed. So we're trying to get all of that back on track now that David's here and present and learning more about Iowa.
Deal. All right, we're on to the LEA Committee. Doesn't let me open it because I want some help.
The LEA committee continues to have discussions with the operation committee to make sure that we're not overlapping in workforces, that we're kind of working together on the different items, and ensuring that the LEA committee is working within its purpose. We also are monitoring the work that's done at the LEA co-location sites and the updates from Swick Myers on the distribution of the control stations. The reason we're doing that is so that we can work toward the decommissioning of the LEA network. And again, the reason we're doing that is because of the discontinuation of support for not only the equipment, but also the service and support from the telecom vendors. This last month, we had significant discussion on the creating a unified statement, which we'll talk about later in the new business, unless we want to talk about it now. The unified statement that we'd use, and a proposed discontinuation and decommissioning date for 2020. Do we want to hold the
Yeah,
other?
we can wait. We can do it under new
Okay.
business.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to other reports, information sharing. We'll open it up to the board members. If you'd like to share anything with the board, it's open. Am I always the one that has? Okay.
I didn't switch to Geico or anything.
Chair, I'll ask a question back to Patrick's comments about the co-locating on Isicsb towers. Is that something that's hypothetical or progressive on our part, meaning there isn't a request yet, or are we getting requests from other radio, phone, et cetera, providers, which I would guess it's the latter?
Yeah, I can answer some of this. So with the co-location on Isicsb sites, we've had a lot of requests from local counties that say have VHF fire paging equipment that does not reach everywhere they need it to go. And in some cases, they've looked at the Isicsb sites as a means to say, hey, if the state allows us to hang our fire paging equipment on the tower site, this would help us out tremendously. So In the past, it was done for a couple of counties on an ad hoc basis, basically kind of a new drafting of an MOA every time and going through the same process, getting DPS, DOT legal looking at it, working with the county law as well, and then making sure that everything is going to be okay when it comes to things like who pays for the interference studies, how is it going to be done if they need access to the hut, things like that. This process would work on standardizing some of that. So we have a process in place that's down in writing and easy to follow.
Excellent. And I can also imagine from the local perspective, if Isics is asking them for ability to erect something in their jurisdiction, there's a reasonable assumption that if we're providing the land, if we're providing the permitting, et cetera, that and we have a need in that area, that it would be quid pro quo to some extent. So excellent. Thank you.
I have one. DPS is going to do another round of training with the how we use the system, and it's geared for hands-on on the use of the radio in the car and the mobile or the portable. Sorry. So we're finding out that, and this is typical, but classroom stuff isn't enough, and small amounts of hands-on isn't enough. So we're going to do it more. Now we're focusing on, we were doing it by areas. We did it by areas. Now we're going to drill it down to districts with agents and troopers with a sign-off sheet on different types of on how to maneuver the radio, how to do the portable, how to get to the interrupt stuff, how to set your cheat buttons, how to get to it quick. We're also expanding on that and inviting the local PSAPs and sheriffs and police to our meeting so we can all collaborate and the troopers and the agents can all both talk to the local dispatch. How do we get a hold of each other now? If you have a control station, this is how we do it. This is what it looks like in our car. Here's how we get to it. So I think that's a good deal that we all communicate, because there's some panic going on about how come you're not answering me on mutual aid anymore? How come you're not answering me on Leah? So we're going to try and solve all that. We're not probably won't solve it all, but I think it's a good step of local and state collaboration with our troopers and our agents and fire marshal on how we talk to each other, especially with the Leah thing coming on. It's kind of a big deal. So that's what's going on with us. Anything else want to share?
I'll just say one thing. I've seen some pretty, with the control stations, back to an older topic, I've seen some pretty creative installations so far with those. Things that we never thought that we may have seen before, how well things can interface, things like that. I was in Wayne County earlier last week, I guess, and they had the consulate we gave them paired with their console, and they had full control over it. It showed up like another tile on the screen. And this was big, too, because it was a different manufacturer consulate to a different manufacturer console. So it worked. It looked like they had a pretty sweet setup there. So the work being done with that's bearing some fruit.
I'll also say we've worked with Peter and the DOT. We meet quite often in regards to the Traffic Management Center and our ability now to expand that, what we've never had before, which is direct contact from the boots on the ground to a highway helper or to direct to the traffic management between state radio or any PSAP for that reason during accident or road shutdowns. So there was kind of a gap there. So I think we've kind of closed that gap with some equipment and our abilities to communicate direct and across the state, for that matter, because you've got about every road covered with camera, and it really helps. But it does help when you see that plow go by. Can you turn around and throw some more salt down here? Or call the TMC direct, and they can go direct. Otherwise, we had to go through the foreman, then they had to go through TMC. Then by that time, the truck's 10 miles down the road. That's just one scenario, but I think that'll be a big deal in gaining that bridge. The other thing was the traffic management would call state radio on the phone. And well, if you can imagine, it's busy during an ice storm. The worst thing you can do is call the dispatcher on the phone if they don't, so. It's easier so we give them a talk group and a local talk group between TMC and state radio that we can just call direct, and it's a lot quicker. Hey, road's open, road's closed, transmit, be done. So that's kind of the progress we had with relationships with DOT and VDOT.
Very clearly going to streamline how our agencies operate together, especially during traffic emergencies.
Yep. Okay, we're on to the radio demonstration, and the Wally's going to handle this, and Chris can jump in. And I have Adam and Wally, if you could come on up, we'll kind of explain what we're going to present here today. And it's just an example and a test of the capabilities of working with two different systems in the state. And there's lots of ways to shake things. There's lots of ways to do things, but at the end of the day, there is a simple way to do it. And I think sometimes we get wrapped up in overcomplicating things when we can already do some things that is actually fairly simple. So they're going to demonstrate the ability to call on a portable, well, I'll just let you do it, on a portable radio to a PSAP and to your ops by turning the dial.
Awesome. And again, the important part is that this is not a solve all, one solution for everything. There's dependencies like anything, and just like any of our public safety vehicles, rarely do you use every tool in the vehicle on every call or every day. This is just one tool you can have in there. So if you possess a radio that has the ability to do P25, 700-800 megahertz phase 2 trunking, and even if you exist in multiple arenas like we do, it's can be as simple as turn the knob. And I believe you wanted to show how you guys use it at the state fair. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So I'll step out of the way, and if you want to step up to the podium here.
So Adam, so kind of a prep here. You're on Isicsb for stuff at the fair, but you're also using.
Correct. Our Monday through Friday normal operations is through Polk County on the Sarah network. Now we have access to Des Moines PD because we're in Des Moines' backyard. Obviously, that's going to change here down the road. But currently, they're still on UHF. And then during the fair, we operate on the state Isicsb network. And when the state patrol comes out to the fairgrounds and we work in concert with each other, we have to be able to communicate back and forth. So we operate on the Sarah network off fair season, and then during the fair, we switch over to the state Isicsb and we communicate with state patrol. Now, one thing we did learn through the first fair of having a new police department stood up is, you spend money in operability, but if you don't have your dispatchers in the same area communicating, then you're still going to have communication gaps there. So we did put all of our dispatchers in the same room, and so that has helped. But it was fairly seamless. So we have a radio that currently communicates with on the multi-platform UHF, and then the Isicsb and the Polk County Sarah network.
So you have zones in your radio that you can switch back.
We have the Isicsb in-op, and then we also have our own Isicsb operations network on that radio.
Okay. So yeah, I'm assuming you have all the regionals and statewides in there.
Correct. Yeah, we do.
Okay. Wally, you as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you want to do your radio call first, or sure? And then I can describe our scenario, how I use it.
Okay.
So first demonstration, I'll show that we can communicate on Polk County ops on the Sarah network. State Fair 752. How do you copy?
752.
And that's going to be on your Sarah Isicsb or your Sarah Raycom network right there. So on State Isicsb 10, are you operating on the R1 call 11?
Yes.
And then somebody is there monitoring that?
I hope.
We'll see.
Please answer.
Des Moines State Fair 752, radio check. How do you copy?
Traffic on region call 1 for Des Moines State. You are loud and clear.
Okay. And that is a Harris Unity XG100 operating on the Isicsb network. And then we'll click over to Des Moines PD on UHF. Des Moines PD, State Fair 752. How do you copy?
Loud and clear.
Copy, thank you.
So that's using a pretty pricey multi-band, right?
Correct,
I mean,
yeah.
that's where you get pricey is when you jump up to all bands, because I think that Harris does all bands, right?
Right.
So but just for the person or the entity that just has a 700 megahertz radio, no UHF, no VHF, you can still switch between systems on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then the cost goes down too, because you're just getting a single, okay.
Like with anything, if you want more, you pay more. There's ways to negotiate that, obviously, but yeah, if 7 and 800 is generally considered one band, and any of the modern equipment, if it does one, it'll do both. So
What if you have, obviously, there's a lot of VHF out there yet, so what if the boots on the ground person has a VHF radio on their hip or in their car, on their ops, and they have a Leah and aid and they have the control station, which is on the regional.
Yep.
Built into the screen at dispatch. Tell me how that works to get through to that person with the VHF radio.
assuming that their console infrastructure has the ability to patch, and so you got audio in, audio out, and push to talk going both directions, right? As long as that console infrastructure has that ability to connect, you just now connected that VHF user in the field through your dispatch infrastructure to the control station that is a 700-800 megahertz control station that's on the respective channel or talk group, rather.
Could you do more than just patch ops and region, let's just say region 5, patched into a VHF on the street? Could you also patch the Leah in that area? Could you do 3?
It's all about capacity and your own hardware. So can you? Yes. Does everyone and every setup, that's going to be very unique and will a lot of times depend on the quantity of equipment that's purchased for a respective PSAP, the age of it, and then having the radios connected. So it's one of those, I'm very cautious to say anything with absolution because the build outs are so unique. And we can do block diagrams and this is good discussion, but really it comes down to you need to do an assessment of your own specific setup in your location to really know what is it going to cost to do what you described. And sometimes you find that it's very little. You may already possess the hardware, and it's really about a training and a configuration thing. In other cases, it may require a heavy uplift. So it really it's one of those you really got to look at on a case-by-case basis.
So if you have poor coverage in your county on VHF now because of narrowbanding or whatever, it cuts your experience is probably not going to be very good with the patch. If you barely have coverage on, because you're working on the footprint of that VHF radio on your hip, not the Isicsb.
Yeah, your primary platform needs to be operable.
Right.
In general, you're not going to gain in a patch scenario on that operability side on your platform if it doesn't exist. This isn't necessarily going to help with that, generally speaking.
Okay.
Yep.
Wally. In price, how pricey is the Harris radio with all that?
I'm not in the sales side, so I wouldn't want to quote, especially here. I wouldn't want to quote the numbers. Really, the best would be to reach out to your local Harris vendor and work on it, through that, because it can really vary. There's quantity discounts.
But I have no idea what the radio I carry, which is a nothing radio, costs. So when you say it's pricey.
And then it's feature driven also.
Okay.
So most everything now is software defined. So out of the box, these radios may do everything that they're capable of doing, but you get what you pay, what you choose to turn on. So that's really where you can start adjusting that cost. And sometimes you may get an entry level configuration with the intent to spend a little more money later to turn on extra features. So really, that got to be directed towards the sales side.
I get that.
Just to be fair, because I don't want to misquote something and cause issues.
Can I throw you a curveball?
We'll give her a shot.
Meet me on UTAC 43D.
You could at least prepped him before.
No, this is a last minute deal.
I don't think. I'm just kidding. I'm sure he'll come through.
What did you say, 42 or 43?
43D.
What's your call sign? Radio system test on UTAC 43D.
10-2.
So that's one of those national interoperability frequencies that everybody can have in their radio if it's capable. And that would, in a scenario that we just did here, didn't require any intervention because we planned ahead and it was in there. Did somebody just answer?
Yeah, someone did.
Okay.
I just did that because obviously we're single band.
What are you UHF?
We're at UHF, and so I just wanted to catch him off guard.
Well, I don't think you did.
Or at least attempt to.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, hey, sometimes we learn the hard way. Well, trust me, I've been there before. So my scenario then
Wally.
is similar in that my day-to-day job at Cedar Rapids Fire Department, we're a user of the Sarah network in Lynn County. We carry the Harris XL200 radio, which I have here as one of them. We also are level 1 or level 2 users of the Isicsb system. We've implemented our control station. We're still working through policy. We're still working through all of the training piece. I mean, we know it's not going to be an overnight thing, but what I wanted to demonstrate was by simply loading the talk groups in the radio, we can demonstrate how really it's as simple as turning the knob. And we also have these that happen to be set up so there's a custom bank, so you can kind of go in and pick and order the things the way you want it. Not everyone's equipment's set up that way. Not everybody wants their equipment set up that way. So you may want it pre-set up or give the user the option. But what I can demonstrate here is similar to what we just did. And I will call, I'm going to use the Harris radio to call the state dispatcher, and then I can just swap and you guys will be able to listen through the other hardware here. Des Moines State from USAR Comms, radio check, region 1, call 11. Try not to stutter when you hear yourself in a door.
Comms, this is Des Moines State on region call 1. Your signal is loud and clear.
Acknowledge. You as well. And then simply by clicking one click, and our radios, of course, because we're fire radios, they talk to us. So when we got them buried in gear, you can get a voice channel announce. It does take a few moments at times for the radios to now sync up with the other systems. They have to find the system and then register and affiliate. And as you see here now, I'm on CR Fire 1 on both radios. So now I'm going to call Cedar Rapids CCOM, which is what we call our Cedar Rapids Dispatch Center, and I'll just run a quick radio test that way if you like. Cedar Rapids CCOM from USAR Comms, radio check on Fire 1.
You're coming in loud and clear.
Acknowledge, thank you.
And what network are you on now?
So that was via the Sarah network.
Okay.
And you heard it again. So the logo on the front of the radio didn't matter. The fact that the radios, that the governance piece was worked out ahead of time and that we have access to the networks, and the fact that the equipment was configured and programmed, it didn't really matter. You could talk to either PSAP. Or we could jump over, as Patrick throws me the curveball, and we can jump off of networks and just do radio to radio. So
on the national stuff.
Yep.
That was in case he had to come to the Department of Corrections to put a fire out or something.
I'm just glad I was ready for that one. It would have looked bad on camera.
So, and if I may add one thing too, just so we have some fairness to all the other manufacturers here, I've got a Kenwood right here, portable, and everything they said on the regional call, I heard too. It was loud and clear. I had to turn it down so I wouldn't reverb into their transmissions, but it came through just fine. If anybody wants to see this one after the fact, we've got them up here.
I mean, it's impossible to bring every possible manufacturer radio for a brief demonstration, and these just happen to be the two brands and models that I use in the course between my fire job and USAR statewide USAR capacity. These just happen to be what I'm using. We're not endorsing any manufacturer, hardware vendor, and as you heard, that I don't get in the middle of that. We try to solve problems and demonstrate ways for the end user to communicate. That's really my goal.
All right. Nice job, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Motorola here today? Melvin here?
He's in the back.
Oh, okay.
Let me know when you see it. See it? All right. Well, it's been keeps on being busy, but we're almost towards the end here, so not a lot to report other than all the stuff that's happening in the background, which is more of the same. Current actions, we've been working on completing Hardin, so we've been working back and forth with the city of Iowa Falls to get agreements in place so that we can have access to the site and build some of the things that we need to build. That's been an ongoing process that's taken quite a while to do. They had given us permission to access the site to build the actual site, which we did, which is a tower, the generator, the shelter. So that site is actually up and running. What remains is all the other things that have to be done at the site, like the landscaping, the regrading of the road that goes up the hill, and then some issues that we've had with the adjacent property owner. So we're working through those. We had to, in essence, stop doing that work until we were all in sync in terms of what was the final agreement, in terms of what kind of reforestation, if you will, the planting of the site, and other agreements with the water flow control and things of that nature. So we couldn't quite continue finishing the site until we had all that stuff locked down. So I think we're pretty close. We got some permission so we can go up there and secure the site, which is one of the things that we wanted to do, build the fence around the site. Other than that, it's just sort of a slow process because there's a lot of folks involved on the legal side and on the city side and whatnot. Rock Rapids, again, that's been sort of a complicated one as well. That one is a very complex site. We've had the tower built and we haven't shipped it yet because we didn't want to ship it to a site that wasn't ready, especially if they were farming the land. So we've confirmed a couple times, is it still there? Is it still there? Any problems? So it's ready to go. But we want to make sure that we had all the agreements in place with Rock Rapids and Iowa Public Television as well. That's been kind of lengthy as well because there are some right-of-ways issues that we've had to correct for, where to put the anchors and whatnot, and also address other construction that's not related to the project but's happening at the site as well. So again, it's complicated because we are building a twin tower to tear down the old tower. So it's complicated, but I think we finally got the last drawing revised and approved, so we can start moving forward on that one. The next piece has been site cleanup and maintenance. I call it maintenance because we've been maintaining, if you will, the system. We've had several lightning strikes, so we've had to go to tower sites and restore the towers. So that's been, it's kind of complicated when that happens, and we're in the midst of the optimization of the system. But it's one of those deals that it's just the norm, that once it goes into maintenance mode, the official maintenance mode, that's a different team of people that handles that. But right now, because we are still in this process, we are handling it amongst ourselves. So what that does is that it takes us away from doing certain things so we can restore those sites back into service because the system is being used. Alarm testing and wiring, so we've done a lot of that. We have a number of sites that are unique that are existing shelters. So we've been working to get those done as well, because those are not the standard, like the standard shelters that we provide that have all the alarms built in. So some of these, the majority are DOT shelters where they didn't have the alarms that we would normally have. So we've been installing those and wiring those as well, so that you can have something that's more consistent with what we do on all the other sites. We've been working on completing the DAQ coverage testing. So we had completed before the bit error rate testing, which is an automated process that that the fix end equipment sends a known test pattern, and then we capture it at the remote end, and then we log all that stuff, and then we take a look at which ones meet the criteria and which ones don't. We had already done that one. This one is more of a voice, can you hear me now type test. And then we're also working on completing the functional acceptance test plan, which we have been doing since last week. And we did some more yesterday, and we're going to take a little pause to get some other things set up so that we can complete the, we have like 5 groups of tests that we have to complete, and we're done. And of course, we got to do the site walks. Visual perspective, here's what the bit error rate map looks like. So everything except for Lyon and Sioux counties, we left those out because the Rock Rapids site hasn't been built. Other than that, we tested every county. So we got 97 of the counties had been tested. And probably hard to tell on your screen, but we got very few red dots on the screen. Most of them are concentrated where we expect them to be. So we got some up here, we got some over here, some over here, and then down over here. Yes, sir.
This is Chris, since this isn't on the screen, for the record. Could I get a copy of this map? I've had a couple more counties recently ask me about getting this map for their county. So would it be possible to get a copy of this?
Yes, we can provide that.
Thank you, sir.
So overall, we're at 99.4% with those 2 counties missing.
And Melvin, this is Chris again. I've noticed that the local enhancements are not listed on this map.
Correct.
So this is just the state-built assets. So if there's been some local enhancements added since
better.
then, it's even better than this then.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The more that gets added, the better it gets in terms of coverage and in terms of route diversity as well. So right now, if we were to fail these 2 counties that are left, we would still meet the 95% coverage requirement. So we're very confident that we're going to pass. This would be a time for me to make a bet, but. All right, so the other piece is the DAQ, which stands for Delivered Audio Quality. And this map shows all the tests, all the counties that have been tested. And we still have a handful of counties that are being tested right now, which are the orange ones. So these names in the map are just the names of the individuals that are actually running them. So, and a day-to-day basis as they finish, we kind of give them different assignments. So This is just so that we can track who's where. So an example, we have over here, can you guys see my pointer? Oh, here I was doing this thinking. All right, so you can see in Kasuth County. So Kasuth County, we have White is her name. And so she's running Kasuth County. So when you look at the right side of the screen, we have talk groups in a little block there. So what we did was we created talk groups that are specific for this test. And we did it just for us. We didn't hand it to anybody else because then everybody else would do the same thing I'm about to do, which would be I'm curious to see what's going on. And then we'd be having a lot of strange traffic all over the state. So even though she's in Kasuth right now, when I look at this, I look at White, and it looks like it's talk group number 1. So if she is active, and I go to talk group number 1,
Breathe deep and smell the piney air.
so these are the funny phrases that are heard.
The hostess taught and you made to serve.
It matters not if you read these words or those.
So it's hard to understand these phrases, and that's why they're used.
The fly made its way along the wall.
So, because they're not logical to us, right? It's like, what does that mean? Our brains tend to fill it in. So right now, if you look at your map, so she's in Kasuth and we're in Polk County, right? So we're carrying the traffic all the way down here because it's an entire network, and we're able to do that because we set these talk groups as statewide talk groups. So we can give them.
30 cents.
So we can give them the flexibility to do what they want to do without us having to just change and
The
change all the time.
doorknob was made of bright, clean brass.
So this is in Kasuth. So again, if I wanted to see, I don't know if Ritter's still there in Butler County.
The chap slipped into the crowd and was lost.
So that would be talk group 10.
So that's on a cycle every how often?
Straight into the wood.
Every 3/4 of a mile?
So the way it works is it's a cycle. So all these radios are synchronized. And by the way, these are computer generated voices, female and male.
Take the hashtag and the watch constant.
So it tries to mix it up, right? And we call these Harvard phrases. There's 255 that are used, and they cycle through. So right now, by switching,
Took the lead and kept it the whole distance.
so now instead of using Kasuth, I'm dragging the Butler County traffic all the way over here so we can hear it too. We do this so that I keep one in the office so that I can make sure that they're actually driving out there and I can hear if there's a problem or not, right? So this is sort of it's kind of like a double blind test, if you will. So when they do their stuff, they don't necessarily know sometimes. So they'll go and turn on the speaker so that they can hear it. And maybe about 10 minutes later, they turn it down because they'll go insane at doing this for, 12 hours a day. It gets a little crazy, so they tend to turn it down. So what we do is here in the project office, we'll put our radio on and we can listen to make sure everything's okay. Sometimes what happens is one side doesn't transmit, the other one does, and there's different reasons for that.
So as they're driving along, the computer's set automatically however.
Correct. So this is what the setup looks like right now. So you have each team, and when I say a team, it's really one person. We've narrowed this down so that each person that's picking a county, they have 2 radios. One of the radios is on a fixed location, which means their hotel room. And the other location is a mobile radio that they set up in their car. So we're using rental cars. So we made these cables that clip onto the battery posts so that we can get the most juice that way. We can't plug into a cigarette lighter because, you know, the mobile radios will pop the fuses, as we found out in the process. So the only difference, if you look at these two diagrams, is that the fixed location has a power supply, which generates the 12 volts for the mobile, which we leave plugged into the outlet at the hotel and a desk. So each one is exactly the same. You got a mobile radio, you got the computer that controls the radio, and then there's some hardware in between. And then they all have the GPS antenna so they can keep track of where they are, and most importantly, what time it is, because it's the timing that's used to synchronize it back and forth. So what happens is that they're all programmed so that, for example, the fixed location at a certain point in time, it goes ahead and says, it transmits, and then it waits for 3 seconds, then it goes into listen mode. And then the one on the other side transmits while this one is listening, and while he's listening, it actually gets recorded into the computer. And then when this one is done transmitting, the mobile then goes into receive mode, and there's like a 2-second delay, and then the fixed location transmits, and then the mobile on the receiver on the receiver on the mobile side on the vehicle then records it. So at the end of the day, each computer has audio logs, audio files recorded for every single transmission received. And then the driver takes the stuff, puts it together. They have to merge the transmit and receive so that you can have one huge file that has 4 audio files for each test point. That's going to be the source or the original for the mobile side, what was received on the fixed side, the source for the fixed side, and then what was received on the mobile side. So when the folks who are grading this listen to it, because again, it takes a while to get used to these phrases. After a while, you start to recognize them, but at first, if you're not sure, it's not that the audio is bad, it's just that your brain is not processing it. So they can listen to the original and say, well, what was it in the original? And they'll still say, what? And eventually, but you can see that the quality of the audio between the two is very, very close. So some of the things, so overall, you have here the Isicsb infrastructure. So here's an example, right? So the fixed location will transmit to the fixed infrastructure. It'll go through the Isicsb cloud, and then some other site will transmit it back to the mobile, and then back and forth it goes. So it's not like they're just talking directly to each other. This is the whole idea that we're testing the RF link between both of them. So we ran into some challenges. So it's been slower than expected. We've had issues where one of the headaches is that because we got the clips for the battery terminals on the cars, you pick up some of the hum that gets transmitted. You hear that little whistle. So we've done several things. We try to put the ferrites around the cable to try to minimize that, and that's helped somewhat. In other cases, the cables, again, kind of, you move it around a little bit, and an hour later you realize that, oh shoot, this wasn't recorded because this happened over here. In some cases, the folks in the some of these hotel rooms at the front door, they have a master switch. So you hit the master switch as your way out, or the folks that are cleaning the hotel room hit the master switch and it kills the power to the outlet. So then the fixed location stops transmitting. So we found, a lot of those little things that, after an hour of doing this, it's like, oh boy, I didn't recognize that there was a problem. So basically, we just go back and we retest it again. So we've had some of these counties where we had to partially retest, or some of them where we had to completely retest because we realized that there were some issues in that process. But overall, we're pretty close to being done. The functional testing, we're pretty close to being done. What remains for the functional testing is the kind of stuff that requires some additional coordination. So we have to, one of the tests is that we have to support transmission with the original legacy system, which is called SmartX. So we require some coordination with Westcom to do that. Others are more intrusive, so we have to do another switch over of the cores, and we got to set some things to be able to do that, and that's the kind of stuff that we want to do in the middle of the night. So I know we've aggravated a lot of people in the process of doing it, a lot of this stuff, but it's kind of what we need to do so we can prove that things are working correctly. But overall, we're pretty good shape. And we're expecting other than Rock Rapids. I think Rock Rapids is just the long pole in the tent here. Hardin, we should be able to get that one done. Other than maybe the plantings, if we're still within the season to do that. But there's other things that they wanted us to do, like retaining walls. They want to change, for example, what the road is made out of, gravel versus asphalt versus cement, those kinds of things. But other than that, the overall system we're using, I know we've aggregated folks. Last month, we had somebody in the process of doing all this stuff that literally wiped out all of the router configurations. So we had outages throughout the entire state. Once we really understood what was happening, we had people, push the new configs into the routers, and we brought the system up again. It was time consuming, but it's just, we are intrusive in what we're doing right now. Once we're done, we don't expect to see that kind of stuff again. That's all I had.
Be clear, the Hardin site's transmitting, it's just the civil work.
Correct. The Hardin site has been transmitting for quite a while. We just need to finish up the stuff that's important to the city of Iowa Falls.
As the DAC testing is finished, do you know when you'll be able to return the radios that were borrowed to do that testing?
I have no recollection of radios being borrowed, so I have no idea.
Sign them out.
I think once, so this whole double blind thing, I want to explain that a little bit because there is a long delay between us doing the test, it being passed on for evaluation, us getting it back, and doing a general assessment of it. That's when we find out, oops, there's a problem here, there's a problem there, so we resend somebody out again. So we have folks that are starting to turn in the kits at the office, but we're going to hold on to them for a couple of weeks, just in case we have to resend people out to some of these counties to redo them again. So there's at least a 2-week delay between events, so we can actually figure out if there's any real issues or not.
All right.
Okay.
First net.
Morning, board. Let me see if Sean's going to get this loaded for me. There we go. So per request last month of a few of the board members, I put together a map to make things a little bit easier for our site launches that happened month to month. So what you're seeing on the screen now is the site launches that we had for the month of August, which we had 11 that went live. All those sites are LTE with Band 14. They included Baldwin, Baxter, Beaver, Fredericksburg, Lime Springs, was it Nosh? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I don't want to butcher. Thank you. Oxford Junction, Ralston, Rose Hill, Sully, and Worthington. So again, those all launched during the month of August with Band 14 and LTE. So far, we've had 43 sites that have launched in the state of Iowa for this market year. The current site build plan is at approximately 60%, so we've got many more to come. Being this is a public forum, I have not included the site build maps in this presentation, but I have them with me. I will be happy to show them to any board member who would like to see the projected build plan for the rest of this year and into 2020. So I have all that on my laptop, and I'll be happy to share that. We did share it at the subcommittee meeting on Tuesday, and I would be happy to share that here. I just can't put it on the screen because it's a public forum. As FirstNet Subcommittee Chair Bischoff said, we are putting together a local control training that will be held next month on October 8th at the subcommittee meeting. My counterpart, Nancy Norsby, will conduct that training because she is a resident expert in local control. And so she's going to handle that and go over local control and all the different things that can be done in that site because it's huge and there's a lot of things to be learned in there. Andy Sackrider was present on Tuesday at the subcommittee meeting. And one of the biggest issues that Andy addressed was the handoff, which a lot of people have brought up. So what Andy kind of said is that everybody wants band 14, and he is kind of pressured to make sure everybody gets band 14. And now that has created the problem that it's the phone, if it's band 14 capable, is trying to hang on to it for as long as it can, even though there might be an LTE tower that it could switch to. But he's getting pressure on one side and he's getting pressure on another side. So basically, we're just going to have to fix it where hopefully everybody will be happy in the middle. So as Chair Bischoff said at the meeting, if it's going to create a better experience for you as a customer, that it needs to go ahead and switch off to an LTE tower instead of just trying to hang on to it and then you're dropping the call, that's not acceptable. And so Andy is going to work on that so that we get that fixed statewide, that the phones are not going to be just trying to hang on to that band 14 as long as it can. It'll go ahead and make that switch to an LTE tower if that's what it needs to do.
So will it do that when band 14 is completely covered in Iowa, or are you going to keep handing off, or are you going to go back to just band 14?
So not every tower will have band 14 from what I understand. Like if it's a very, very rural area that band 14 might not be needed in, then band 14 won't be in that tower. So yes, sir, it would still make that handoff switch to the band 14 tower, or to the LTE tower, I'm sorry.
Okay, so in a very rural area, what do you mean?
So if it's not a high populated area, then band 14 probably won't be on that tower. It will be an LTE tower. So then the phone, if it's leaving a band 14 tower, it would switch over to that LTE tower and not hang on to that band 14.
Yeah, I get that. What I'm driving at is we built it for coverage, not population. Geography. We built it for geographic coverage because tornadoes don't just happen in Warren County.
Right.
They happen in towns of 500. So it's not a concern, but I'm just questioning if they're not going to put band 14 in, is the LTE band down there given them priority and preemption?
Yes, sir. So you're always going to have priority and preemption on a tower, whether it's band 14 or LTE, which is as today, because not every tower currently has band 14 because existing towers are needing to be upgraded.
Okay.
So yes, sir, you will always have priority and preemption on the network, whether you're on band 14 tower or an LTE tower. Yes, you always have that. And some of the things that I wanted to put on this slide, just to kind of highlight, I'm sure most everybody knows this, but the network is a purpose-built network exclusively for public safety, which we do have a coverage commitment for rural, tribal, and U.S. territories, specifically for public safety, so those communications can go through. No throttling on the network, that's brought up a lot, but again, there is no throttling. If you hit a certain amount of data on your smartphone or a Cradle Point or Sierra Wireless data device, there is no throttling. If you use 50 gigs, if you use 100 gigs, then that's fine because you're using it for mission purpose that you need to complete with your agency. FirstNet does have the dedicated public safety core that routes and encrypts network traffic, creating the highly secure environment public safety does require. We have an ongoing consultative process to achieve collaboration with public safety. And of course, you have the quality of service priority and preemption, an exclusive public safety core, the application ecosystem, and the deployables if needed in the event of tornadoes, flooding, where we have lost the network and we need to bring deployables in to keep the communications going. And that, as a FirstNet customer, you get that at no charge. And we would have those to you within 14 hours of the event request. And of course, all this is required by the contract with the United States government and the Department of Commerce, which governs the FirstNet Responder Network Authority for 25 years. And again, anybody, I'll be here till after the meeting's over. Please get with me. I can pull up the maps and go into detail what the build-out plan is for the state and show you. Did anybody have any other questions or comments?
Very informative, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the governance of it. So today I'm public safety.
Yes, sir.
So, but down the road, I may not be for whatever. So if I retire or something once upon a time. So how do we track, or how do we keep track of these folks that are qualified on it now, and then when they're not? What's the governance? You know, it's self-governing, or
So that's a great
what's
question. In the local control portal that we're going to have the training on next month, when you upload employees into that so that they can then go to an AT&T store to get FirstNet because they qualify, what we ask you to do is, if that person left the agency, to please go into the portal and remove them, so that they will then get notified that they are no longer eligible for FirstNet and that they need to come into an AT&T store and change their plan to a regular commercial plan. If they do not do that within 60 days, we will do that for them. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, because I'm curious about where it can go back and forth and
Yeah,
make it fair to everybody.
we rely on you as the agency to govern that for us. Now, we do have people that sign up for FirstNet without going through the agency, because maybe the agency does not have FirstNet, but that doesn't mean that the employee can't get FirstNet if it's a sworn police officer, a medic, or firefighter. So they can go into an AT&T store and present their credentials to get on FirstNet. So there's an audit that takes place at least once a year where those accounts are audited, which Chair Lampy we're going through right now with a person, but they have to re-show their credentials to show that they are still eligible to stay on FirstNet. So we have a twofold process. We have you that we'd like to help us, but then we also have the audit process if the person went into an AT&T store and did not use the agency portal.
Okay, great.
So we want to make sure that anybody that's on the network belongs on the network, because it's your network and we don't need anybody on it that doesn't deserve.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot. Jim Lundstedt.
Good morning, Chair Lampy and members of the board. Couple of quick updates for you, recapping what Chris mentioned about our efforts to work on the statewide communications interoperability plan this week. Sincerely appreciate the folks who spent time with us going through the webinar process, as well as those that worked with us this week as we worked through the effort to continue to finalize the document. Very good feedback. The contracting team is back in Arlington today, and I've already had a couple of questions come back, so we look forward to bringing that to fruition fairly soon. We conducted the Public Safety Answering Point, or ECC, Cybersecurity Awareness webinar last month, correct, Chris? And apologize that we had some connectivity issues for some participants. Previous week, we delivered a similar webinar for another state and chose to use our Adobe Connect platform. We had a lot of feedback that we had problems with connecting, so the contractor, being agile, said, well, we'll use Skype instead. Well, unfortunately, in a managed service environment, how you use Skype is not universal. And if you have an instance of Skype on your computer and you're not allowed to connect to an outside resource, we had similar issues that we had fought with Adobe Connect. We've since delivered a recorded copy of the webinar to Swick Myers so it can be distributed upon demand. And we have one remaining deliverable, and that is to put together a model cyber incident response plan, basically a straw man checklist that the PSAP can take, that they can build a cyber incident response plan. The key is, who are you going to call first? What are you going to do? Don't forget to call or notify this agency. And I have this question a lot. Who would you call first? Well, if it's the middle of the night and your communications are impacted, that checklist needs to be current and something in your hands. So the deliverable will be at least a model plan that can be distributed to those who would like to have it. Happy to see that we're getting the COMT, the All Hazards Communications Technician, COML, and a potential Incident Tactical Dispatch course scheduled to close out our FY 2019 TA request for the state. As we mentioned at the SCIP workshop, we will soon be opening the 2020 options. And in particular, we'll be paying attention to those things that were identified in the SCIP that might be supported for future TA, whether it's model for training or something like a slick sheet or fact sheet on Essex, something along that line. Wanted to call to your attention, if you follow the news, there's been a lot of information going on about ransomware and cyber incidents recently. Having been deployed to chase a couple of these, I will tell you, if nothing else, question, does your agency have a backup for your PCs? Not just your servers, but your individual PCs. In one particular case, we had a managed service provider who had elected to put agency PCs backups on that agency's servers. And when they were hit with ransomware, not only was their server encrypted, but so was their backup copy to restore their desktops. We talk about having a tangible backup, something that's air gapped, maybe something that's stored off site. You know, let's go back to IT 101. Where's your backup? Do you have a backup of your backup? Do you test your backup to see if you can restore your backup? Those kind of things. We learned some very hard lessons from the managed service provider method because some people did not ever question that. So under your service level agreement, if you don't have your own IT, you might be asking that question. Where is my backup, and can I have a hard copy or an external drive copy that I can store someplace else? Yesterday afternoon, the ICTAP branch had a really good briefing on the FirstNet Uplift tool and network service tool from the FirstNet Authority. They have an in-house SME who is willing to help. We talked a lot about the evolution of the product, a change in the map layers, as well as did a little demonstration using the FirstNet app called FirstNet Assist. We did a temporary elevation of a couple of people and talked about the ability to schedule, how to set up monitoring for network outages and network maintenance. That tool continues to evolve. It's looking much more robust and mature, and looking forward to seeing how that evolves in the near-term future. So good progress being made along those lines. And to speak to your question about the audit, as somebody who set up a subscriber paid account, I've already had my first audit. Email comes to me and to my supervisor that says, are you still an eligible employee? My area is under emergency management. And yes, I am still an employee, so check the box. Fail the audit, service will transition to conventional AT&T consumer, as I understand it. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Standards Working Group.
Yeah, reviewed 2 standards last month. Again, we've been able to shorten the meetings quite a bit. Looked at some more potential options with alert tones. That was tabled for the next month also, pending some more work. We did send an update to the participation standard to the user group for their stamp of approval as well. So we'll hopefully have something that goes to governance within the next month or so regarding an update on how we handle the user levels. In particularly, it dealt with core connected dispatch consoles and looking at defining them under level 3 use. That's it.
Okay, we have any old business? Let's move on to new business. Chair Buffington, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we'll go ahead with you.
Okay, the user group committee has reviewed 6 applications, 5 new and 1 updated. County level 2, Cherokee County level 2, Grove Investigations level 2, Fonda Police Department level 1, Hancock County updated level 3 applicant participation plan, and Winnebago County level 3. I'm going to have to remove myself from 5 and 6, but from the user group committee, I will motion under new business A 1 through 4.
I think that was a motion I heard from Andy on 1 through 4. Benton,
You mentioned 5 and 6, and also I think 2 of these are captured in 1, so 4 might need to be split out into 2 different ones.
you want to do 1 through 3?
Well, we have Fonda and Hancock both on number 4, at least on my sheet.
Oh, you may have
I have an
No.
old one. Never mind.
version.
Okay, no problem. So 1 through 4, Benton Cherokee Federal Bureau Investigation, Fonda is a motion for that. Do I have a second on that?
Yes.
Ness is a second. Any further discussion on those 4? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Andy, are you? Or you're on
Yes.
number 5. Sorry, you go on these.
Yeah, somebody else is going to have to make a recommendation motion for Winnebago and Hancock County, and I will be abstaining from that vote.
Okay, opposed?
No, you need a motion first. Yeah, he's
Oh,
not gonna
okay, I
motion.
thought I heard a motion from
No.
1 through.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, sorry.
For
It's hard to hear.
For 5 and 6.
5 and 6, Hancock and Winnebago, right?
Yes.
Bischoff will second.
Okay, with a second, any further discussion on 5 and 6? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Both of them do. On to B, INTD credential. Is Amber Jennings with us?
Amber, are you here? Come on up. I'll take a photo.
Okay, Amber, let's go up here. Amber, this is a certificate of recognition. The certificate is awarded to Amber Jennings for completing all requirements of the Isicsb Communications Credentialing Program and entitled to be recognized and credentialed in the state of Iowa for the following position, which is Incident Tactical Dispatcher, awarded this 12th day of September. It's my understanding this is the very first one. Is that correct? Chris? Okay, congratulations. You bet. You have another one? Brad, is he here?
No, Brad, make it.
Brad Ratliff, okay.
Amber, I've got a question for you. What inspired you to go through this gosh awful process to get this credential?
Started probably about 6 years ago when I went to an AFCO, and they were talking about it, and then just ever since then I've been going to a bunch of trainings, and the ISD came up in Monticello, and asked my supervisor, and the next day I think Chris sent out an email, and that started the process. I've been doing it for 17 years, and something I just wanted to further educate myself and help people out.
Great, great to
Awesome.
know.
Okay, move on to the Leah Committee statement. Does everybody have that pulled up, or if you've reviewed it, or if you have it in paper form? It's on the documents on the board meeting, if you have a computer. I think it was sent out also.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
That time. All right.
Are we ready? First thing I want to make sure that you're aware of is how much help Swick Myers has been and doing a great job of getting the consulates out, getting them working on the testing, working on the training, and getting all that done, because if he hadn't been doing this, we would not be where we are today. We would not be able to go to the next step. So, every month, that's one of the reasons we ask him to make sure that he lets the committee know, where are we at? How are we proceeding? Is there any challenges? Is there anything we can do to help? Because we have members from all across the state in all different areas of the law enforcement areas. So if there is a challenge, he doesn't have to do it alone, I guess is what I'm initially saying. We're there to help out. Now, this unified statement was put together by us. We have two of them. There's a long form and a short form. The long form, we're looking at using it for more of formal publications, like the law enforcement newsletters that may be here in Iowa, so that we can keep people informed. The short one would be, in a brief mention that we might need, that not a full article, not a full page, but just a little piece. And the reason that we're doing this again is because the service and support from the telecom industries and the equipment vendors is being taken away. We're not going to have it anymore. So the LEA committee has recommended a sunset date of October 31st of 2020. That, with us trying to keep, with every reasonable effort, the sites up that are running right now. And with the equipment failing and things like that, there may be some that we can't keep up that long, but we will make our reasonable efforts to get that done. I have asked that as of right now, until we get your approval, that statement be kept confidential. The committee has not published that out to anybody other than you. In case there's some things you want changed, if you approve it. If you do not approve it, we don't want something floating around out there that doesn't need to be. But one of the things that after we get the approval, we would recommend or suggest that we do some weekly notifications on the LEA channels that would start maybe even as early as October 1st of 2019, in another month or another few weeks. We would have one day a week that we would do the announcement, and that announcement would be provided or given out over that LEA channel 3 times during that day, so that we'd be able to hit a lot of the different shifts. We'd be able to hit a lot of different people. In that little statement, they would also be referred to a website if there's some questions. The website would have their long statement with a contact that they can get hold of if they need to talk. Otherwise, it would be an email address. They'd be able to get hold of us. The short statement would also be put in the Iowa system calendar, so that would go out, and that goes out weekly. We're also looking at adding, like I said earlier, putting this on the website, adding that, but also adding a countdown clock so that we can see exactly what it is, so that everybody will be aware that in a year, LEA may not be around anymore. And then we're also continuing to provide information at the RIC meetings so that information can get out that way. One of our biggest concerns is safety. So we do not want to leave anybody without a way to communicate. So whether it's a small community, whether that is having challenges, the committee would, our job would be to say, what can we do to help? What can we do to help you? There may be nothing we can do, but maybe there is. But we just need to find out what that challenge might be. And we continue to hear the challenges from the dispatch centers and the law enforcement officers with the LEA. So it does have to be addressed. So right now, as part of the LEA committee, we would respectfully ask that you would approve this so we could move forward. Is there any questions? Or Michelle or Chris, do you have anything to add? Have I missed anything?
You had everything.
Thank you.
I would ask that, since the LEA committee is a subcommittee and not official standing committee of the board, that if we're going to do something today, that it has to be through operation.
Yep. I was,
But-
if I was going to allow conversation to happen if there were questions and then move it.
So, does everybody have, I'll just leave it open. Has everybody read it over? Let's discuss it. Do we need to? Or-
My question is we're just addressing Leah. What about like mutual aid and point to point?
Yeah, so mutual aid, I'm going to assume that you're referencing VLaw 31. VLaw 31 will be around. That's staying. That's a national non-federal interop channel. There's no infrastructure tied to it. It's just simplex radio to radio. So there's really nothing to affect that one. So that's going to be hanging around. Point to point's kind of the same way. There's really no infrastructure behind it. It's just a mobile-based radio and PSAPs tuned to a frequency. Point to point's staying as long as people want to use it too.
And the operations committee is working on all of the legacy systems that are functional in the state and referenced in plans to update all of those.
I'm just wondering, maybe you don't want me to get into this too technically, but I wonder if some of that should be put in this document, because you're just addressing Leah and the without saying too much, I guess, here's how we're going to handle it.
Just more so to address any potential reading between the lines of what if.
Yeah, because they're going to look at that potentially and say, well, I've got all these other conventional resources I could use. What about that? Are you discontinuing that? I mean, maybe I'm rocking the boat. I don't know. But that's the way I see it.
I don't see it as rocking the boat. I see it as reading the landscape and what are we going to do, and that is one of the tasks that operations is tackling. And LEA is really the plan that we have for LEA is really a proof of concept with as the document that I sent out about a month ago now to identify here's our plan. What problems might there be with that plan? How do we address those problems? And working toward a policy and updating state plans that reference primarily VHF and others.
Point to point's been pretty popular, probably just as much as Leah has been over the decades. And those are all assets that potentially are connected through phone lines or microwave hops, whatever. I mean, okay, so we figured out Leah. Is there going to be something in the future that says we're going to potentially discontinue point to point on VHF? Is that going to be in a separate document, or are you going to maybe potentially deal with that now?
Separate document is what. Because Leah has a very definite timeline, and there's some urgency behind Leah.
Right.
The others don't have the urgency, and we want to take our time, do it right, review the policies, vet the policies, and ensure there's concurrence on this is how the state's moving forward.
Yeah.
All of this is just a Leah, specifically Leah. Should there be some reference in there to say that the VLaw and the point-to-point is still has some stability currently?
You know, I was looking at the document, Larry, and it would not be hard to add a sentence if that was desirable by the board to make the disclaimer that this will not affect the existing point-to-point or VLaw 31 frequencies. That's something we could throw into this document at almost any one given point to try to get that across as crystal clear that the simplex frequencies that are in use will still be there.
Without causing a delay. And I think the pressing nature of this, letting people know so they can start planning, they can start making arrangements. And we have an end date of when the equipment and repairs will expire. I think it's necessary to move it. I think it would be appropriate to move it with that small tweak to give people greater information that haven't participated in the committee. But really, all this does is says this one is going to go away in a year. So. I won't make the motion, but I'm anxious to support it if somebody does.
Bishop would move to adopt the language before us with the addition of a reference to the existing simplex systems that are, or not simplex, the simplex resources that are in place, that there's no change to those.
Keep that.
I would like to amend table 1. I believe there is a typo. Under HSEMD region, it has region 6, and the talk group monitor for that is R5, call 61, and I believe it should be R6.
Oh, drat. Yep, I'll fix that.
Okay, so a motion with adding the mutual aid and, or not affected, and what Peter just made with the minor typo there. Do I have a second?
I'll second, yes.
This is a second. Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any specific LEA region or area that has a heightened concern right now that might be ready to surrender?
Well, we could probably right now surrender Bert Leah. We did some research and there's hardly been any traffic on it except for Skip. So that we could probably do that right away.
I didn't know if there was any that were ready to failure.
Oh, they're all
Failure that.
It's all about, some of them go down more than others. Just it's the quality of that phone line. Yeah, I mean it's hard to say. Every other week there's something going around.
Roll the dice.
We don't notice this as much. I mean, Base and Leah sometimes go down together, but they're two separate circuits. But
Okay.
We'll monitor that. We'll keep the committee apprised on, hey, we really need to go down here. Yeah. And that's why those control stations are imperative, that we get those into PSAPs for that replacement talk group, which what I assume is going to be the regional. Okay, so would that be considered, am I wrong in saying that your regional talk group would be the new Leah then? On that part.
Where Leah is being decommissioned, there is a regional call group, a hailing channel. When you need assistance, you will go to the calling channel. And if your situation warrants a tactical group or tactical talk group to deal with the situation, you'll be assigned one. Otherwise, if it's just merely a request for help, the communication center that's supporting it will get you the help that you need.
Or if, let's
So
say
there's no replacing Leah. We're using the regional call groups and hailing.
So the control station at the PSAP is going to be parked on what?
Call.
Call.
Okay, so everybody's clear. All right. All right, we're moving on here to public. I didn't quite make noon, John, but public comment, if anybody would like to approach, come on up, Jason.
Connie, I appreciate your kind words and appreciation for the SWIC, but the committee really did good work in turning out that product, doing so thoughtfully and in having participants from varied professions and regions. So hats off to your efforts. Thank you.
So I didn't come to make any statements today originally, but a couple of the topics I heard discussed, I felt compelled to offer some local input from our perspective. The first one I would address would be the allowing of VHF paging for fire and EMS on the state towers. I think it's good that the board looks at having a policy that so that it's not a one-off. We're not reinventing the wheel every time. I would encourage the board to make sure that the burden placed on the local agencies is as minimal as is necessary to protect the system and the Isicsb investment in the towers. It's certainly a local resource, and there is a continued need at this time for reliable volunteer alerting for emergency responders. So I just wanted to make sure that I stated that. The other thing that I just heard discussed that I wanted to mention is the idea of VLAW and point-to-point. There's a lot of VHF users that are going to remain in the state. They're not going anywhere. A lot of them have no desire to move operationally to 7800, and we certainly can't be even thinking about at this time taking those vital resources away from them. I think that in my opinion, the point-to-point will probably wane first, but that's going to have to be a grassroots effort. That's going to have to be, as it becomes less useful and the regional callings become more useful, I think that migration is going to happen naturally. There's no reason to push it. VLAW 31, like Chris stated, is a non-federal interoperability channel, and I don't believe it is going anywhere, and I don't believe we should speak about it going anywhere. It just gives locals heartburn when you start talking about that kind of stuff. There's just no need for the board to really, I don't think, get involved in that conversation. That's my 2 cents on it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
You should really get on our technology calls with this co-locate stuff, because then you can have your input.
Sure, I would love to be part of those.
And I'll send you a
calls when
draft
I can.
document. How's that?
What's that?
I'll send you a draft document so you're ready.
That'd be great, Pat.
I'll do that.
And I say that because we are looking at a multi-site simulcast paging system as part of a proposal that we have in hand that we're considering. And so it is very important to me for our location in Carroll County. And I know that there's a lot of other places that have that same concern. So that's all. Thank you.
Jason, thank you for contributing.
Thank you.
All right, I'll need a motion for adjournment. Oh, unless we have anybody else, I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you.